Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Tracy Emerick. Now, Tracy has written a phenomenal book called Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ. And listen, if you are like me, you read that title and you're already intrigued, right? You're already looking at it and trying to connect the dots. Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ, my goodness. We're about to have that discussion. First and foremost, it's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the regular online book resellers. But if you want to gather everything that Tracy has in store, and I mean everything because listen, this book, Extreme Entrepreneurs, is actually one of a series of other books where this connection to Jesus Christ is made. You're going to want to check out those other ones as well, and you got to head on over to authortracyemerick.com in order to do so. Now, there are 3 other books. One is called Constant Courage, Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesus Christ. Nifty Neighbors, Mr. Rogers and Jesus Christ, and then Consummate Coaches, Bill Belichick and Jesus Christ. And being a New England boy myself, Bill Belichick, yeah, let's talk about it, all right? Let's talk about it. People, all of these books available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, authortracyemerick.com. Head on over there, pick up your copies. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out the fact that Tracy was brought to our network, People of Distinction, by one of the best publishing firms in the business. People you already know, I'm talking about Quipper Prints. So if you're a writer out there who has gone through their process and now you need help moving the masterpiece you just developed, well, have no fear. Contact Quipper Prints. I'm telling you, this is exactly what they specialize in. So you're going to want to head on over to quipperprints.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is a true pleasure to have Tracy here on the line. People, I'm telling you, I mentioned a moment ago how intriguing that title was. Well, really, how intriguing all of his titles are. Because that underlying connection that he's making to Jesus Christ, if you have not read the books, you're looking at it and you're like, I don't understand this connection. Steve Jobs, what does Steve Jobs have to do with Jesus Christ? Well, I promise you, keep an open mind and allow yourself to explore further because questions like that will be answered on those pages, but so much more. This book, and really these books, are revolutionary, people. You don't have to believe what Tracy believes. What you should do is be open to the concept. And through that accepting of at least hearing what he has to say, or in this instance, reading what he has to say, I want you to formulate some conversations with those around you. Let's talk about it. And I promise you, once you truly give it a go, you may find yourself agreeing with a lot more than you thought. And at the end of the day, listen, man, Tracy is the expert. Let's hear what he has to say. All right, sit back and strap in. Tracy, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tracy, listen, it's a true pleasure, man. We're really looking forward to this. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Well, started out, I'm a businessman primarily. I had my own business for 25 years, a marketing company, and I have a MBA and a PhD in business. So my whole life income was revolved around business. I retired and then went into the legislature and spent 10 years as a state rep. And so I'm done enough of that. But then I had kind of I've been my moderator at my church for 36 years. So I've been very active in the congregational church. And that's where the idea came from, was in a Bible study. we were talking about Jesus and his position, how he knocked all the higher ups. He was very rebellious and came in with the idea that love is more important than fear, and scared everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's kind of an entrepreneurial idea right there. Because most entrepreneurs, as in the case of Steve Jobs, are not inventors. People confuse the two. Entrepreneurs are people who take what is pretty much already existing, kind of reformulate it into a better idea. And that's what Jesus did, and that's what Steve Jobs did. I mean, he didn't invent anything, but he had the vision, and I call it the a priori understanding of an idea that you can't read in a book. I mean, he came up with the idea of a user interface for regular people, and it took him a long time to put it together. But when the iPhone came out at the beginning of this century, I mean, it revolutionized the world. I was already a Mac user. I've been a Mac user since they came out in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been using Macs for a long time. But then when the iPod came out, everybody, what they call it, 1,000 tunes in your pocket. I think that's how they positioned it. And then when they put a telephone on it, it was holy mackerel. Hang on to your hat, because we're going for a ride. And that's the kind of extreme entrepreneuring. But if you had asked Steve Jobs exactly how he was going to get to where he was going, I don't think he knew. He just knew where he wanted to go.
Yeah. And
that's what entrepreneurs are all about. I mean, it's the same thing with Jesus. He knew the message he wanted to get across, and he told his disciples over and over and over and over. I guess they finally got it, because there's like 1.2 billion Christians now. But he had a tough time getting people to understand what he was all about too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I put the two together as they both had visions we didn't understand. But when they got done implementing, we all understand.
Mm-hmm.
We
Tracy,
don't pay attention necessarily, but we understand.
Well, that's another discussion. We'll invite you back on for the next podcast.
Right.
Tracy, I'm loving what you're talking about. And I know amongst all of your books, it has that connecting theme. That, the process of how we all have God within us, right? And you said something very poignant on the pre-screening call about how whether we believe in God, he believes in us. I love that concept. I think that's very philosophical, and we can have a long discussion just on that. But talk to us about this connecting theme amongst all of your books, because, of course, we're talking about extreme entrepreneurs. So got it, a clear delineation on what that subject is. But then you go on in your next book, Constant Courage, talking about Martin Luther King, Nifty Neighbors, Mr. Rogers gets brought up, and then Consummate Coaches, Bill Belichick, top of his class, one of the best to ever do it. So talk to us about the connecting through line amongst all of those books, and what inspired you to embark upon the journey in this fashion.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I started out with Extreme Entrepreneurs, and then my publisher said, "Do you have any more in there?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I got some other ideas." So then I did the Constant Courage, and then the Nifty Neighbors kind of followed, and they do have a linear relationship, because the entrepreneuring book is basically coming up with an idea, listening to your soul, understanding what you might do different, better for yourself, for your organization, for your family, for your job, whatever. That's the idea book. Then you have to have the courage to push your idea forward. And that's the Constant Courage. That's the Martin Luther King Jr. book of his idea of equality, and he was single-minded on that, and he had the courage to stick with it. Because the one thing about being an entrepreneur is once you have your idea, everybody's going to tell you it's not going to work. I mean, it doesn't matter what your idea is. You're going to find 10 people say, that's never going to work. And so you've got to have the courage of your convictions, keep going. once you've got your courage up, then you're going to have other people involved. And that's where the nifty neighbors comes in, is you've got to have other people buying into your concept, buying into your idea, helping you with your idea, whatever it is. And if you get successful at your idea, if your idea starts to flourish, you're going to have to become a coach. You're going to have to manage this thing that you got started. And that's a different mindset. So it's tough to go through all these 4 phases and be the same individual. That's the interesting part, because most people can't do all 4. They have to involve other people for some pieces of it. But the idea is there is a relationship that they all have of God within, and there's different lessons to be learned in each book.
Yeah. Interestingly
enough, I was doing some homework on the Wizard of Oz. It was look up a question: who did this, who did that, and it kind of came to my mind that the characters in the Wizard of Oz are these 4 books individually. The Tin Man wanted a heart, and that's Mr. Rogers' book. The Lion wanted courage, and that's the Martin Luther King Jr. book. And the Scarecrow wanted a brain, and that's the Steve Jobs book. And then I'm looking around saying, well, where's the coach? And if you delve into the story a little bit, you'll see that Glinda, the nice witch, she was the one that started to say, she said, follow the yellow brick road. And at the end, she was the one that told, come on, all I can think of is Judy Garland.
Dorothy.
The girl in Wizard of Oz. Dorothy, thank you. He told Dorothy that she had the ruby slippers and she could have always gone home. So it was kind of a cosmic reinforcement of the 4 books. But by saying, look, there was a movie came out in the 30s that it kind of laid this all out, and it was totally coincidental. I mean, it wasn't like I went to the Wizard of Oz and said, let's copy their characters. It was just, I mean, obviously there was a divine intervention kind of got me here.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting. Interesting to me. I mean, it's a little spooky to me, quite honestly.
There is so much more of a discussion to be had. It starts with this book. It's called Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ by Tracy Emerick. You're going to want to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, check out author TracyEmerick.com and gather all of these books because as I've mentioned, as he's mentioned, Extreme Entrepreneurs is just one of the 4 magnificent books. You're going to want to get involved in all of them. Tracy, as we're continuing on, again, we're talking about the importance of the soul. One thing in and of itself, just as a side note, I love the fact that you represent that because it leaps past the borders of Christianity in and of itself. Now, I know you mentioned God, but when we talk about the concept of the soul, regardless of religion, there are a lot of religions that bring up the idea of a soul. And I think that there's universal connectivity within that, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's, whatever. They have that same type of idea represented. And I believe that formulates a bridge and the concept then gets translated. But my next question that I wanted to go into, well, we're talking about the soul, the importance of it, understanding of it.
Right.
You mentioned before, and so typical, poignant, that you talked about Steve Jobs and the invention of this magnificent technology that he's created. Well, how do you look at the impact of technology in this ever-increasing digital world? Like, talk to us about some of the effects that you believe it could potentially have.
Well, I think an individual's relationship with their soul is static. I mean, it's dynamic in the sense of contribution to your life, but I don't know that technology has all that much effect other than over confusing us.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's part. I think the technology is more confusion for our brain than it is for our soul, because our soul is a pretty steady eddy, so to speak. But I think the technology issues are much more ethereal and intellectual and confusing than they are soul related.
Yeah.
But I can give you an example, because I had this question once. Well, how does Steve Jobs' soul come into this? Steve Jobs was not a religious person, but when he hired people, what he found is the best employees he had is he tried all of the resumes and all that stuff. It didn't work. So what he did was if he had interest in an individual, he'd put him in front of his technology, whatever the technology they were working on, and let them interact with it. And if they got excited about it, he would hire them. That individual's soul related to that technology. So I'm looking at it the other way out, that your soul is relating to the technology more than the technology is relating to your soul. But that showed that individual's soul interest in Steve's technology. So it does tie in, and most of us don't listen to our soul. We get a lot of messages that we say, nah, I don't like that one, I don't like that one. And we do what we think's the best, and it doesn't work. And then we say, well, maybe I should have gone with my gut. That's what you hear most of the time. My gut told me to do something else, but I didn't do it, and look what I did to myself. That's your soul talking. And we don't listen very often, because we think it's happenstance, and it's not. I mean, my soul told me to write this book, Extreme Entrepreneurs. I'm not a writer. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a dollars and cents and a database guy. I was never would say I'm a writer, but my soul said, you got to write this book. You got to get the message out, that make the connection between people and God within them. Okay, here I am. I listened to my soul, and here I am. Now I got to try to promote the book, and hopefully it's going to do what I think I was supposed to say. That's all. What else can I do? That's where I am right now.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I'm with you, is trying to just get the word out that give it a read, or it's also available in an audio book. So if you like to listen, and it's also available in Spanish and Chinese. So
I'm telling you, there's no excuse for people not to get the book, is what you're saying, Tracy. That's what I'm picking up. All right? You don't have to read it. You can listen to it. Right. It's also in other languages. Right. A great segue that you've established, because as we close out, what would you like the legacy of these books to be? How would you like your readers to interpret your words?
I would like them to interpret it that they are one person in multifunctions. I have a line that says, if you are what you do, when you don't, you aren't. And what that does is take away all of the things that you identify yourself as. I'm a post mailman, or I'm a singer, or I'm a, whatever. It's not what you do, it's who you are. And that's where the melding has to happen, because we have compartmentalized our lives. We have our religious life, we have our at-home life, we have our at-work life, we have our at-play life, and we assume different persona in each one of those lives. And my point is, don't do that. You're going to be a lot happier if you're the same, if you let your soul help you be the same in all of your different worlds. Now that's not specifically spelled out in any one of these books, but that's an underlying theme that I'm trying to get across, is to you have enough faith in yourself to be yourself in all circumstances.
You know where you gotta go, people. I'm telling you, listen, I'm not gonna run a 3-hour podcast here. It's Amazon. It's Barnes & Noble, all right? It's author TracyEmerick.com. It starts with extreme entrepreneurs, but you got constant courage, you got nifty neighbors, you got consummate coaches. Pick all of these magnificent books up and add them to your shelf. Get them as gifts to add to someone else's shelf, and then start the conversations and see where it takes you, man, because there's some great stuff here. Tracy, This has been a true pleasure, man, and an absolute honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you.